Hello, everyone. Good day. I'll say good day rather than good morning or good afternoon because we have people joining us from various parts of the world. My name is John Cox. I'm a professor of global studies and history here at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte. I also direct our university's Center for Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights Studies. And I'm intentionally talking just a little bit slowly right now, just to let a few more people filter in. But in just a moment, I'll introduce my colleague, Emma Gergen, who will introduce the panelists, or who will introduce the first panelist. And so thanks very much for joining this very special program, Kurdish Women Making Revolution in Rojava, a region of northeastern Syria. This is an event that Dr. Ergun and I and a couple others started working on a year and a half ago at the time of the Turkish invasion of Rojava in October 2019. We were going to hold this event in a different form last March, late March, I think it was March 25th. But then, of course, it was just a couple weeks before that things began to get a little bit crazy around the world. We're all quite ready to get back onto campuses and be more out in public, but there are some small upsides, sometimes a big upside to this Zoom world or webinar world that we've inhabited for the last 12 or 13 months. And one of them is that it was possible to put together this really exciting and amazing panel of people who, again, come from around the world. So I just want to quickly recognize the co-sponsors of this event. Thanks very much to the Women's and Gender Studies program at UNC Charlotte, as well as my Center for Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights Studies, and also acknowledge the assistance that we got from a grant from the Chancellor's Diversity Challenge Fund. I also just want to say that what we're talking about for today is not only a pressing matter of human rights, but also a really exciting issue of human liberation. And as someone who has followed the Kurdish struggle for, I guess, 30 years now, and lived and worked with Kurdish activists in various parts of the world, including Berlin and Paris and New York, I can just say that we're going to learn a lot more in the next hour about some exciting experiments and models and examples of alternate forms of social and political organization. So it's a real honor to be associated with this event. So let me just establish one very small ground rule, which is that by the nature of this event as a webinar, we'll ask you to put any questions that you have into the chat box. And then our co-host, Emma Gergen, will read out questions during the discussion period. Okay, so with that, let me introduce my good friend and colleague, Emma Gergen, who is also professor of global studies as well as of women's and gender studies.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here at this wonderful event, and thank you to our panelists for accepting our invitation. My name is Emma Gergen. I'm an assistant professor of women's and gender studies and global studies at UNC Charlotte. So I'll just quickly introduce the topic of the panel. John already said a bit, and then I'll introduce our moderator, and then she will introduce the speakers as their part comes in. So Kurds make the world's largest nation that does not have a state to call their own. Approximately 35 Kurdish people are spread across Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Iran, not to mention the massive Kurdish diaspora formed in Europe, North America, and other regions of the world. Kurdish people have suffered immense political repression, even genocide, and have been fighting for independence and liberation for generations. Since 2012, Kurds have been conducting a radical experiment in self-governance in the northern region of Syria called Rojava, which borders Turkey. They have created a decentralized economy known as a democratic confederacy based on the ethical and political principles of radical democracy, social ecology, and full gender equality. In October 2019, with the complicity of the US government, Turkish military invaded Rojava and other parts of the region, an invasion Turkey ironically called Operation Peace Spring. Amnesty International has already reported many war crimes and other violations committed in the region by the Turkish military and Turkey-backed Syrian forces. So the question is, years after its initial creation, what remains of this radical, pluralist, democratic, feminist project of self-governance? How are Kurdish women resisting and making revolution under these difficult circumstances? We have 4 wonderful, accomplished speakers today to explore these questions and enlighten us about this really, really exciting experiment. So let me briefly introduce our moderator, and then I will leave the floor to her and she will introduce the rest of the speakers. Our moderator, my good friend and colleague, Ruken Isik, is a Kurdish-American researcher and a Ph.D. candidate at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Her work focuses on Kurdish women's activism in Turkey, Syria, and in the diaspora. So once again, if you have questions, post them on the chat board anytime, and our speakers will address them at the end of the panel. And without further ado, I just present to you our panelist and Ruken Isik. Thank you.
Thank you, Emek. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this panel on women in Rojava. I would like to thank University of North Carolina, Charlotte for hosting this lecture. And also special thanks to Dr. Meghan and Dr. Genc for organizing this event and inviting us. So we have 3 great panelists, as Emek mentioned, who will talk about the administrative model of the North and East Syria, mostly known as Rojava, diplomacy, international solidarity, and the current situation in the Turkish-occupied regions with a special focus on the Afrin region. So in this panel, we'll discuss how the Kurds in Syria have achieved to establish an administration in the middle of a civil war that became an unprecedented model for the Middle East and stands as a hopeful project for the coexistence of different ethnic and religious groups that puts gender equality at the center of all. So I will do a brief introduction on Rojava, and then we'll introduce each panelist right before their presentations. After all the presentations, we'll have a Q&A session. So I wanted to start with the Kurds. I don't want to repeat Emek, but I think this is important to mention. The Kurds are one of the largest ethnic minority in the world, with an estimated 40 million population that do not have a state of their own. When I said estimated, it's because the census data is not based on ethnicity in these countries. So during the World War I, Kurds are primarily split between Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria. The largest Kurdish population, which is estimated to be 20 million, over 20 million, lives in Turkey. They are not recognized in the constitution. The Kurds in Turkey have been exposed to enforced assimilation since the establishment of the Turkish state as a nation in 1923. And since 2016, like dozens of Kurdish politicians, activists have been arrested. The Kurds in Iraq survived years of genocidal campaigns in the hands of the Saddam regime. And just yesterday, it was the 33rd anniversary of the Anfal genocide. So in 2005, the Iraqi Kurds established an autonomous region known as Kurdistan region of Iraq. So the Kurds in Iran are also oppressed by the Islamist regime of Tehran. Just recently, for example, an Iranian court sentenced Zahra Mohammadi, a Kurdish teacher, to 5 years in prison for teaching Kurdish language. The situation of Kurds in Syria was not different than the Kurds in Turkey or Iran before the war started in Syria in 2011. They didn't have education in their native language. Kurdish political and cultural organizing was banned by the Bodette regime in Syria. In the 1960s, 300,000 of Kurds were stripped of citizenship, and in the following years, an Arabization project launched by the Syrian government, where Arabs were settled in the regions where Kurds lived to create an Arab belt. So the name Rojava means West in Kurdish and refers to Western Kurdistan and is still used to describe the autonomous region officially known as North and East Syria. The region is administered by the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria. I'm just going to share a slide. So, all right. So the name Rojava, as I said, means in Kurdish, and the region is administered by the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria. The constituency of the Northern Syria includes or recognizes not only Kurds, but also Armenians, Syriacs, Arabs, Turkmens, and Yazidis. It is highest political assembly in the Syrian Democratic Council, as you can see the logo on the screen. And our panelist, Sinam Mohammad, is the representative of the SDC to the United States. SDC's unified military force is called Syrian Democratic Forces, which has been a major partner of the US-led coalition in the defeat of ISIS in Syria. The Syrian Democratic Council is a political wing that governs 7 regions. Afrin region is now under the occupation of Turkey since March of 2018, and Meghan Bodette will talk about this region. The autonomous administration of northern Syria aims to be a model for post-conflict Syria and proposes a federative Syria, which would be governed from local rather than centralized government, and will include all different ethnic and religious groups and advocates for gender equality in every segment of the society. Now I will show you some maps so that you can geographically locate the North and East Syria. So as you can see, this is a map that I got from the Rojava Information Center, and you can visit their website. They have many resources. So these are the first in 2014, like 3 cantons were established, Afrin, Kobani, and Jazira cantons. And then this is a map from the 2014. And in this one, you can see the demographics of North and East Syria as of January 2018. As you can see, the green sites are the Arabic majority areas, and the yellow ones are the Kurdish majority area, and the yellow and the stripes ones are the strong presence of Syrian minorities. And as you can see, this one, this map represents the 7 regions that the Syrian Democratic Council is administrating. So, as our panel is about women and Rojava, so Kurdish women have organized themselves in an unprecedented way since the war broke out in Syria in 2011. From taking up arms against ISIS and building village shelters for women to trying to enact a gender equal system, despite their portrayal as badass women fighters in the Western media, especially with the siege of the city of Kobani by ISIS. The YPG, the Women Protection Units fighters, were covered widely in the Western media, and Elif Genc will talk more about on this topic. Like there are now novels written on women in Rojava in English. A recent one by Gail Zamak-Laman, The Daughters of Kobani. It is a story of the YPG fighters. Originally, the Kurdish women's movement secretly started to organize themselves in 2004 under the roof of Kongresstar, a women's congress. Women's movement organizes within the principles of democratic confederalism, which is proposed as an alternative model based on democracy, ecology, and women's liberation. So under the communal system of northern Syria, women have also formed their own communes to address their needs and problems, taking important steps to institutionalize gender equality in the society. So while each commune is represented under the TEVDEM, the Movement for a Democratic Society in Northeast Syria, women's communes are represented under the umbrella of Kongresstar. Now, I will give the floor to our speaker, to Mrs. Sinam Sherkany Mohammad. She is the representative of the Syrian Democratic Council to the United States and has served as the European representative of the Democratic Self-Administration of Rojava and the co-chair of Rojava's Democratic Society movement. Sinam, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much for organizing this panel. I would like to thank the University of Charlotte University and all the other, who is really, working on this issue. It's a very important issue we are discussing today. Thank you for having me here. It's my honor, really. When we talk about the women issue, it is not the Kurdish issue only, a women Kurdish. It is a global issue, we can say. Because there is no difference between the problems of the women, there is no difference between them. Everywhere, no matter if you are from America, if you are from Syria, if you are Kurdish, if you are Arab, if you are Christians, whatever, all the women, even the colors, if you are black or white, whatever is it, no difference between all the problems or the issues that the woman faces in all women face in all over the world. As I'm from Syria, I'm from Rojava. Let me talk about this now. In the Middle East, most of the women, they have a lot of problem actually. We had before the revolution of Rojava and before the uprising of 2011, the women there, they were suffering a lot from many issues, and they have a lot of challenges in the society, such as, let me say, the habits, the old habits, the traditions, all the traditions that in what was in the society. As I can mention some example, for instance, the forced marriage, honor killing, the woman will be married under the age of 18 years old. So all these issues, the women, as from the traditional and the old traditions and the habits in the society, they face, they suffer from. Other thing is the Islamist radical ideology, such as the ISIS. We witnessed how when ISIS or the Jabhat al-Nusra or Al-Qaeda, when they entered Syria and even in Iraq, we see how they don't respect the woman, they humiliate the woman, and they made the woman as the sexual slaves, actually being sold in the sexual slaves market. And that is one example of a Yazidi woman from Sherkany in 2014, until now they are suffering from that. The other issue, it is neglecting or denying the role of the woman in politics in the society. All this, a lot of problem actually in the society was there. But with the uprising of 2011 in Syria, we are, as a Kurds in our region, in the north and northeast Syria, we started to organize our people actually, especially the women. And we believe that if you are not able to have a free woman, you will not be able to have actually a free society. And this is very obvious the woman has a very great role in the society actually. So for that, we realize that this is a fact. We have to organize the women first. And this is what we did actually. So we had a lot of movement for the women, and maybe Ruken mentioned about the Congress Star. It is really, it has a great role in organizing the women. And after that, we realized that the Kurdish women alone, they can't just enlightened or advocate for the Kurdish women issues only. So we believe that the women must be together in order to liberate their society. So for that, we contact the other women in our region, like Arabs, Syriac Christians, Armenian, and many others also, components who are living together in the society, in our region together. And this is what we did. So with this issue, we could reach to all the women in all the other components together, as well as we did it in our administration. The administration, which is now leading or administrating the region, which is about 1/3 of the Syrian territory, it is led by this Northeast administration in Syria. And this is not only led by Kurdish people, it is by Kurds, Arabs, Syriacs, Armenians, Turkmen. Together they are administrating this region together. And so now we have the co-presidency or the co-chair system, which have a woman and a man together administrating in each institution in our society. In each institution, we have now the quota for the women it's about 40% in all our, governor body, which is the administration of North and East Syria. So we believe that when we say the revolution of Rojava, it means that we could make a lot of changes in the society. This is, I'm talking from the society aspects, social aspects. So we have in our new administration a social contract, which prevent the forced marriage, which prevent the multi-wives that lead to polygamy, which gives the rights for the woman that she will choose her life and the man she will marry him, and which prevent the honor killing. So all this, I think, we made all the traditions upside down, and this is the revolution, so that we change it at all. Of course, we had a lot of challenges. We had a lot of problems. We had a lot of people of the male mentality who are against such, the changes in the society. But by the women insisting on this one, and they are now, everything is okay. Everyone is accepting this system, the system of the freedom of the woman, the equal gender, we can say, equality between man and the woman in our region. And this is what we are working on. So it is not only in the social life, but it is also, it goes in the political life. So we are very aware that the woman should be should have a role in the political and in the politics actually. So whatever we have now, especially in Syria, for instance, the Constitution Committee, the peace talk negotiation, we notice that most of the people who are sitting at the table, they are men. Few of them are women, but they are not able to take the decision. They are not in the decision making. So this is what we want to reach. The woman should be in the decision making, should be there, because we are seeking for the equality between men and women. We are not against the men, by the way. Some people, maybe they will understand it in a wrong way. We are not against it. We respect them, but we need to be equal together. And this is one of the human rights, actually, issue we have to raise. So as we say that in our administration, in our Northeast Syria, actually the Syrian Democratic Council, which is the political umbrella of the Syrian Democratic Forces that fight the ISIS, and they could defeat ISIS in the region. This is one of the issues I want to raise, that the woman has taken her role not only in the politics, not only in social life, but even in protection and defending. And this is the issue which makes everyone respect the woman, especially the Kurdish woman. Of course, the YPJ, the forces that been established in the beginning by the women, it was a Kurdish woman who was establishing this. Then after that, I said we have to work with the other also component like Arabs and the Syrian. So all of them, they joined now. Many of the Arab women, they joined these forces, the women forces actually, and they defeat also ISIS together, shoulder to shoulder with the Kurdish women. And this is what we say, that this is the very important revolution happened. That means you could liberate the Arab woman with you, the Syrian woman with you. So the Kurdish woman was a pioneer, but now they are together with the Kurds, with the Arab, with the Syriac, with the Armenians, with the multi-religions. Even you can see many women together, shoulder by shoulder, the Arabs and Muslim, the Yazidi and Christian, and so all together defending and fighting together in order to rescue the women from the ISIS and the terrorist group. So the women played very great role in protection and in defending. and they have their own forces, which is YPJ, and they are including in the SDF, also a part of the SDF. So when we look at the situation now in the region, we can see that 1/3 of the Syrian territory under the administration of the democratic administration of Northeast Syria are protected by the Syrian Democratic Forces, actually. But when we are talking about the solution for Syria now, about 10 years we are away from the solution. We are not able to reach any solution in Syria. We see that the women, even the SDC women, the administration representative of the administration of Northeast Syria, Kurdish women, they are not representing, not at the table of the negotiation committee or in Geneva peace talk. We are not there. We are excluded from there because of the many issues. One of them is Turkish veto. The other issue that we are not even at the table with the Constitution Committee, which is discussing the future of Syrian constitution. And we are not there. For that, we ask that the women must take their role either in the Constitution Committee, of course, and with the peace talk of the Syrian peace talk. We have to be at the table. As a representative of the Syrian Democratic Council, as a representative of the administration, as a woman also be there. So this is what we need. So there is no sharing, for the women who are even now in the Constitution Committee, they don't have the decision making. They are, most of them, like a show. They put it in the picture, to make the picture more beautiful with some women there. And this is, we reject it at all. We need the women to be at the table and to take a decision. And we have many women. We have a lot of women in our administration, and in SDC, they can play this role. When I would like to, go another issue down here. In our region, we have the many organizations for the women, or institution for the women. One of them is the Syrian Women Council. Syrian Women Council, which is not only Kurdish, they are Kurds, Arabs, and Syriac, whatever, but they are from all over Syria. So we have women from south of Syria, from Damascus, from Homs, from the other cities of Syria. All together, they made the Syrian Women Council. But we have another council, which is the Women Council of the Northeast Syria. Only the Northeast Syria women. That means the Kurdish, the Arab, Syriac, all who is living in this region, in the Northeast Syria. They have their own council, and they made a lot of changes in the society. They are working to have their seat at the table of the negotiation committee, and even to be at the table of the Constitution Committee. Imagine the constitution of the new future of Syria without the women stand there. It will not work. I am as a woman, actually, I'm a Kurdish woman and a Syrian woman. I would be at this Constitution Committee, to guarantee my rights as a woman in this constitution and my rights as a Kurdish woman also in this constitution. So it's very important that the women should be present at this Constitution Committee. I would like to talk about, something about else, which is Afrin. Afrin region, it was from the administration before. In 2018, the Afrin region, which is in the northwest of the Syria, in 2018, it has been occupied by Turkey and by the mercenaries affiliated and supported by Turkey under the name of Syrian National Army. All of these people who are now in Turkey, in Afrin, they are radical, they are very Islamist groups, and in Afrin now you can't find any woman which having, her freedom in the region. So there is no equal gender in this region after the occupation. It has been changed at all. We have no freedom of religions, which is very even basic in the human rights. There is no after the occupation of Turkey to Africa. Unfortunately, now we have been 3 years and more even the occupation of Afrin. The people of Afrin have been displaced. Women have been raped in Afrin by these groups who are affiliated by Turkey. They have been killed. Demography changing has been committed in Afrin, as well as the ethnic cleansing. So for that, we asked that to have a committee to investigate about these crimes which happen in the region. I will stop here and I will be happy to have your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Mohammad, and we'll come back to you with more questions. I'm sure our guests have a lot of questions. So our third speaker is Meghan Bodette. She received a Bachelor of Science in Foreign Service from Georgetown University, where she concentrated in international law, institutions, and ethics. Meghan directs the Missing Afrin Women Project. Please go ahead, Meghan.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank everyone at UNCC for putting this together and my wonderful fellow panelists for this great discussion today. So as Sinam was discussing, in North and East Syria, you really did have this revolution. And when you have any kind of revolution, by definition, you're going up against an established system, and that's going to make you some enemies. And when your revolution is not only against dictatorial states occupying the regions where Kurds live, not only against, these extremist fundamentalist terrorist groups, and also against the everyday oppression and discrimination that women, as again has been mentioned here, really everywhere in the world face, a form of oppression that isn't unique to northern Syria or to Kurds or to the Middle East at all, but it's really quite universal. When you have a revolution like that, you're going to make yourself a lot of enemies because you're targeting many very established systems. And so that's what's happened with the threats that the really incredibly strong women's movement in North and East Syria has faced. There are essentially 3 different levels of threats that have been targeting this women's movement. First, at the highest level, you have these nation states, which, as Ruken was talking about, are very exclusive nationalist governments in the areas where Kurds live, in Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. These states are very obviously hostile to both Kurds and to women. They tend to be very conservative and patriarchal governments as well. So naturally, a movement, led and pioneered by Kurdish women is a great threat to them. And that's how we see these governments going after Kurdish women, from arrests to political assassinations to the situation in the Turkish occupied areas of northern Syria that Sinam mentioned that I'm going to go in further. So that's one dimension, these governments and their allies. Then we have non-state actors, the Syrian National Army, which is the Turkish-backed Syrian opposition, and of course ISIS, have a very rigid, fundamentalist, backwards view of women. They believe that violence against women is justified. They use it as a tactic of war, and they brutally discriminate against women in the areas they control. Because the Kurdish women's movement, both on the front lines, through the YPJ, and also in their efforts to present an alternative to Syrian society, to show Syrians, men and women, that there is another way to organize this kind of system, they present a threat to these non-state actors as well, because these actors depend on and get support from a very conservative view of patriarchal domination. And then you have underpinning all of these threats from state actors and non-state actors alike, you have that basic oppression of women that exists everywhere. Because everywhere in the world, right, you have discriminatory laws. You have men who believe that women and girls can't step up and lead in politics, in science, in media, on the battlefield, in any of the fields where women are leading and women are making sacrifices in North and East Syria. That is a universal problem. And because it is so universal, it ties together all the other threats that the women's movement in North and East Syria faces. We can see how this all comes together when we look at the situation in the areas of North and East Syria that have been occupied by Turkey and the Syrian National Army. As both Ruken showed with her maps and Sinam discussed, you have one of these areas is Afrin, which is in Syria's northwest, was a predominantly Kurdish area with Yazidi and Alevi minorities, as well as a Christian community. And then invaded in 2019 during Operation Peace Spring. There is Sherkany or Ras Al Ain and Girespi or Tel Abyad. These are in the northeast of Syria, east of the Euphrates River, right alongside the Turkish border. In both of these areas, the Turkish invasion was marked by violence and discrimination against women from the very beginning, in addition to the intent of demographic change. We saw Syrian National Army fighters mutilating the bodies of Kurdish women fighters who had been killed and posting these very graphic videos as, something that they were proud of. We saw during Operation Peace Spring the assassination of Hevrin Khalaf, who was a leading Kurdish feminist politician working to organize Arab women, Kurdish women, Christian women, all women from Northeast Syria together in the future Syria Party, the party that she was Secretary General of. We saw these groups, really cheering as they destroyed women's institutions. You can see them tearing down flags and smashing up posters. They have a very nasty habit of filming themselves, doing all of these things because, again, they're proud of it. They want you to know that they hate women. They want you to know that they hate, peace and coexistence. And so from the very beginning of these military operations, we knew that women were a target. And then when we see the governance in the occupied areas, we can see this even more clearly as well. Sinam described how there were laws and institutions set up to protect the rights of all women in North and East Syria, from their social contract to specific legislation about women's rights to all the different levels of women's institutions and organizations that women could organize through. All of these have been abolished and completely destroyed in the areas that Turkey and the Syrian National Army control. There are now no laws preventing child marriages, forced marriages, so-called honor violence, or any of the other forms of discrimination and violence against women that the autonomous administration tried to ban. There's no social support for women and girls who are victims of these forms of violence, meaning that even, someone who does suffer from, one of these incidents or someone who needs some kind of safety somewhere to escape to, under the autonomous administration, they had that. They had women's safe houses, they had the all-female security forces who would help protect women. So now not only are the laws protecting women gone, but the institutions that helped women when they were in a situation, facing someone who had broken those laws, those institutions are gone too. There are very few women represented in the governance under the Syrian interim government, which is the opposition backed by Turkey. It's always at a rate of less than 10%. For one example, a study has shown that on the Turkish-backed council in Afrin, there were 100 men and 7 women for the region-wide council. And in the local council in the city of Sherkany, Ras Al Ain, there was just 1 woman on the 25-member local council. So a very low level of women's representation in governance. No women serve in the security forces. And the security forces in the Turkish occupied areas, both Turkish personnel and members of the Syrian National Army, regularly commit brutal human rights violations targeting women and girls through the Missing Afrin Women Project. I've worked to document cases of reports of kidnappings and disappearances of women and girls in Afrin carried out by Turkish-backed Syrian National Army groups. What I found in documenting these reports from local sources, human rights organizations, local media, and other sources of information about these cases was that in 2020, in the past year, there were 88 incidents where the name of the victim was known of kidnappings and disappearances of women and girls in Afrin, which is a very small area in northwest Syria, I believe slightly smaller than the state of Rhode Island. This was one incident approximately every 4 days. As of January 1st, 2021, 51 of these individuals remain missing, 35 were reported to have been released, and 1 had allegedly been murdered. 17 of the 35 individuals who had been released were only freed after the payment of a ransom. So not only is this a tactic that terrorizes the victims, but it's used by occupying forces to extort their families. And we know that the conditions in detention when these individuals, are imprisoned by these groups are horrific, because there's been documented reports from the United Nations, the US Department of State, and human rights organizations like Amnesty International that have said outright that torture and sexual violence in prisons run by these groups is common, and that Turkey, which is a NATO state and an ally of the United States, often supervises these violent actions and may have command responsibility for failing to stop them. So overall, there is an active and targeted destruction of all of the institutions and legal protections that women built to defend themselves in these areas. And there's also regular violence and discrimination, ensuring that, as even the United Nations has documented, many women don't even feel safe to go outside and leave their homes by themselves. So it's very clear that the revolutionary nature of, what's been done for women's rights in North and East Syria is something that the states and non-state actors that target North and East Syria seek to target specifically. And I think it's important to know that when you're looking at both a political understanding of the situation and also the need for solidarity, because we have to address the fact that this is a military occupation that is specifically hostile to women. The states and non-state actors that are participating in these actions in the occupied areas, and I will add that everything that's going on in Afrin that's been described, from kidnappings, sexual violence, discrimination, the repealing of laws, and the damaging of institutions, all of that also happened in Sherkany and Tel Abyad, the area that Turkey occupied during Operation Peace Spring as well. It's the same conditions in both areas, so just to note that. But we have to understand that this is a fundamentally misogynist policy, and that this is a policy that has specifically gone out of its way to terrorize women and destroy their institutions, when we can go forward to talk about what solutions are needed and what kind of solidarity that we can offer. If you'd be interested in seeing more about the situation in Afrin, you can go to missingafrinwomen.org. That's where the data for what I've said to you there about the cases of kidnappings and disappearances is. And I think that I'll wrap it up there with that description of the situation. And now you probably want to hear about what you can do to stand in solidarity. So we're going to hear about that.
All right, thank you so much, Meghan, for your presentation about a region that we don't hear that much in the mainstream media. So our third speaker and last speaker is Elif Genc. She's a Ph.D. student in politics at the New School for Social Research and is also an adjunct professor at St. John's University and Marymount College in New York. She is also an activist in the Kurdish women's freedom movement in Canada and the United States. Elif, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ruken. Thank you, everyone, for having me today. Especially, I'll thank UNC Charlotte and Emek Ergün in the Women and Gender Studies program. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so I will be speaking specifically about North American solidarity with Rojava. So basically meaning North American solidarity, I'm speaking about Canada and the USA, where I have been active and been with and worked with several different solidarity groups, which I will get into. And then I will also talk about how you can plug in and start doing some of this really essential international work. So clearly, like as my fellow panelists have mentioned, you can see there's a lot of work that needs to be done in the on the international front. There is so much oppression that needs to be alleviated, or you can try to garner international support, diplomacy. So I'll get into that. Just one second. Okay, sorry. So these are a variety of different groups that exist right now in between Canada and the USA. North American, solidarity for Rojava, and I just wanted to go through some of them. I'm technically a member of most of them, and I'm just saying that because I want to emphasize the fact that you can do this work across borders, you can do this work online, you can do, anything that you can do to try and alleviate some of the oppression of Rojava right now, and also to, bring international attention to their incredible revolution, women's revolution, as Sinam Mohammad was, illustrating for us, and also, to help support, projects like Missing Women in Afrin. So there's the Kurdish Democratic Federation of Canada, which I'm technically a co-chair of right now, but basically it's a federation that was made a couple of years ago, like around 2016, and its main objective is for lobbying and diplomacy work in Canada to support the international solidarity of Rojava. Then you have the Kurdish Community Center of Toronto, which has been around since 1992. And this is the community center that I come from and started this work in. But it's probably one of the most active community centers, if not the most active community center in North America currently. And they're doing lots of work towards international solidarity of Rojava. Then we have Afrin Women's Collective, which is a recently formed women's collective out of the community center that is also, working to bring attention to the incredible revolutionary women's movement that is going on in Rojava. Then we have American Kurdish Association that's based out of New Jersey, but also, sort of the tri-state area, ACA, and they have quite a long tradition of in this tri-state area of doing solidarity work. Then I mentioned Rojava Solidarity Collective, and it was actually a small group that started around the time of the invasion of Kobane, and now at this point is now mostly just an online group. But really, even online work, even doing social media work is actually quite, it can be very essential, because we live in that kind of world right now where social media is so essential in getting the message across, garnering international, international attention and so on. And then there's the Emergency Committee for Rojava. An Emergency Committee for Rojava was formed around its predecessor was NARA, so North America Rojava Alliance, with which Sinam Mohammad actually began here in New York when I first arrived some years ago, and now it's Emergency Committee for Rojava, formed around the time of the invasion of Afrin, when it was really essential more than ever to try and alleviate some of the horrors of what was going on there, but also to bring attention to the incredible, revolutionary struggle, as we mentioned. So I'm just going to, So in terms of solidarity work, the kind of, most often there's days of action. So here I just wanted to give you some examples of that. My apologies for any interruptions. Okay. I just wanted to give you some examples of that. So here we have on the left a Rojava Solidarity Caravan that was taking place around time of Newroz, which is our New Year celebration. And as you can see, their Emergency Committee for Rojava, it was their event, and then it was co-sponsored or endorsed by ACA. And then we also have some solidarity groups that we're doing work with in the New York area. And so I'll get to that about how essential solidarity work is to this movement as well, or at least in terms of what we can offer. And then on the right side we have so it's enough, it's enough to basically mean that it is enough of the Turkish invasion of Afrin, and then this was a group effort by Toronto Kurdish Community Center, and then also Free Women's Collective, the Free Women's Collective, as well as another organization in Toronto called the Kurdish House. So yeah, basically saying no to occupation, no to genocide, and we will defend women and life. And these are just examples of the kind of days of action that are constantly being called for. I'll give you a few more examples. So you have, a global call for action constantly. There'll be an international call for support for, the revolution in Rojava. Then there can be hashtag campaigns. That's also very common and also very effective, not to think that it's not just as effective as being in the space. And then, stop femicide of the Turkish state, or the ongoing feminicide of, the women of Rojava, as my fellow panelists mentioned. About being in the space, I mean, often you might see in these situations that the numbers are not huge, but just being, quite often what is happening, or what is more often the case, is that there is like targeted assassinations of women who are doing this work from the region, from Rojava, so it just becomes essential, not just in terms of the numbers, but just to be in that space. And over the years, I think we are coming to realize that it's not so much, of course, as many numbers as you can get, as much international, support as you can offer, but at the same time, it's about being in the space. It's about representing for the women who are being targeted for it, or arrested, or all manner of horrors. So to be able to just be in that space and giving them a voice, when they have been assassinated for political work is something that's really essential. I'm just going to show you one quick clip, and I won't keep it too long, but just of the when maybe you guys recall, but when the U.S. pulled out of Rojava in the winter of 2019, it was a big shock, and it left the forces there, YPG and YPJ, to the mercy, of the Turkish army, which is the second largest NATO army. And of course, the forces are very substantial, but still, at the same time, they were left, to the jihadist proxies that Turkey has, instrumented against, those forces. So it really, if you guys recall, in the US and in Canada, this was, a moment of extreme international solidarity. So I'll show you just a clip coming out of Toronto from that time, Toronto in Canada. Okay. So yeah, you get an idea of what I was talking about in terms of days of action and, and being in this space. But then also there's seminars very similar to, what we're doing here today. And I'm so happy to be on a panel with these my incredible panelists who I've had the pleasure of getting to know and working with over the years. So just an example is a recent effort by, Kurdish Women Studies Network, of a lecture series, or creating a Kurdish Women Studies Network. And very often these seminars are also crossing over between activism and academia, which can be very intertwined, and in terms of actually bringing in international solidarity. As you see, for example, in this seminar, we have of a wide range of both academics, activists, and and political actors. And then another one is Free Women Collective, as I mentioned, that collective, and they were having, during the campaign to prosecute the dictator Erdogan. So to prosecute the dictator, prosecute Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who is the president of Turkey currently, and who is responsible for, Turkey right now is responsible for the horrible oppression, ongoing invasion of of Rojava and of the region. So we were just, we try and find speakers to speak to that, and more often, our sisters in solidarity in different parts of the world. Oops. So stop that right there. Okay. So yeah, I just very briefly, so again, another thing that is so essential, and then I'll leave it off here and then give you some information on how to plug in, is solidarity. So creating solidarity networks between, I guess, groups here in the US that are like-minded, that have similar political ideologies in terms of, emancipation of women's rights, emancipation of Black liberation struggle, emancipation of indigenous peoples, oppressed peoples all over the world. Basically, it gives us an opportunity for all the oppressed peoples and colonized people. And, of course, Rojava is a colonized region, and the, Kurdish people are colonized peoples. And this gives an opportunity to create these kind of solidarity networks. So I just showed you very briefly, but the Syria Women's Collective has been for the last, I think, 4 years, if not Syria Women's Collective, but the Women's Congress anyways, coming out of the community center in Toronto, have been part of International Working Women's Day. So March 8th, which is a very significant day for the revolution, and it's very important. It's spread, it's celebrated, across the region. So here as well, we want to, we hold events and everything, and we're very happy to be one of the co-organizers actually of the event of International Working Women's Day. And then just very lastly, I want to leave you with just a recent event that happened between Black Socialist America and Congresstar, as my panelists have mentioned the group, and this is a really incredible example of the kind of solidarity that can be fostered and hopeful and will continue throughout these years, trying to bring international attention not only to the Rojava, to the Rojava revolution, but at the same time to try and make those connections between Black liberation struggle and and other struggles of oppressed peoples of America. So and just lastly, I just wanted to leave you off with some information from Emergency Committee for Rojava, which is currently the most active organization right now in New York area, certainly, and also on a national level. So just if you see at the bottom here, it says contact us. There's all these different options to plug in, and both online and in person, and hopefully, again, of course, the COVID pandemic has presented us with many obstacles in terms of being able to do international solidarity work, but at the same time, it has actually presented us with many opportunities, which is why I'm able to be on a panel like this today. So thank you so much, and I'll leave it at that. And maybe in the Q&A, if you have any questions about how to plug in and how to get started on some of this international solidarity work, I'd be happy to help you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Elif, for covering solidarity work with Rojava and activism in the North America. Well, we have plenty of times. Our presenters, they use their time in a very good way. So I will open the floor for Q&A. You can just type your questions in the chat box. And I'm just checking if you don't have any questions. I have some questions to our panelists. Maybe I can start with that, and then we can go back to the participant questions. So I want to start with Sinam Mohammad, if I can. So you briefly talked about the peace talks with the Syrian regime, and then I know that Russia is involved in that too. Could you give us more details on that? What is the scope of the peace talks, and how Kurds would be part of that? Part of that talk, so that they can have a say in the future of the Syria. Could you please elaborate on that topic a little bit for us?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, when we talk about the peace talk, it is the United Nations who are leading this peace talk between the regime and the other opposition. And this opposition, unfortunately, they are based in Turkey, and they are working according to the Turkish agenda. This is what's going on. The other group also is there, which is the civil society organization group. So even in all this, even the regime side or the opposition, which is in Turkey, or the organization, civil society organization, independent person, we are not with all these groups. We are not. We are excluded as a SDC, as the administration, as a Kurd also. We are excluded from this peace talk. And it has been now since 9 years they are leading this peace talk in Geneva, but they couldn't reach to any solution. Because all the Syrian people, representative, they are not at the table actually. The people who are at the table, most of them, if they represent a very, we can say, small group of Syrian people, but the other, they are not representative. So they will not reach to any solution without representing all the Syrian people at the table. And one of them is the SDC administration representative and the Kurdish people. So because of that, we ask them all the time to be at the table. Geir Pedersen, the United Nations, from the United Nations to Syria, he declared just before 1 month, he declared that this peace talk, Geneva, has been reached to an end, dead end. So there is no solution, there is nothing, we couldn't do anything. Because of many reasons, as I mentioned, they are not representing all the Syrian people, as well as the people who are there, they're representing one ideology. They are not representing all the Syrian people. For instance, most of them, they are Islamist radical group. I can say that because they are in Turkey and they are in Afrin. So what is committed in Afrin, these people, they are at the table. And we are not, of course, most of the Syrian people, they are not like that. So we need to have the representation of all the Syrian people at the table. It's the same thing in the Constitution Committee, And unfortunately, we are not there. Now this is stopped now. I think they will be working on another track or issue to have this solution for the Syrian issue. But till now, it is not very clear. We hope that we can reach to a solution. We hope that we can end the bloodshed of the Syrian people and the Kurdish people and the Arabs, all the people in Syria, they are suffering. We have now 100,000 of IDPs inside Syria, 300,000 from Afrin and 300,000 from Sherkany and Tel Aviv. All they are displaced, and who is in their houses? They are the other groups who comes from actually from the other city affiliated by Turkey. And even we can see that many of the former leader of ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra al-Qaeda, they are now there in Afrin and Ras al-Ain Sherkany. So it is very important issue that I think even the United Nations realized that they will not having any solution with this group. So they need to include all the Syrian people. This peace talk should be more comprehensive to all Syrian people.
All right, thank you so much. And also to follow up this question, as we know, you're the representative of the SDC in the United States, you're a Kurdish diplomat. What is the SDC mission in the United States? And we now have a new administration in the United States. Do you see any difference between the current one and the previous one? Could you please say something about that as well?
Yeah. As I mentioned, the women also have their role in the diplomacy and in politics in Rojava and on the administration. And because of that, we come here to United States in 2017. We have an office which is registered here officially, and it is the Syrian Democratic Council mission to the United States. In this office, we are now 3 of us. I am a Kurdish woman, the other colleague, they are Syriac and Arab men. So all they are, we are administrating this office together. We witnessed, of course, we deal with the previous administration, the US administration during President Trump, and now also with the new administration. Of course, during the President Trump, we have a lot of, we can say the people, the Kurdish people especially, they felt they were betrayed by when the decision has been taken in 2019 in October, so that they come and the Turkish attack our region in northeast Syria, and they occupied Ras al-Ain, Sherkany, and Tel Aviv. And now, due to that, we have 300,000 IDPs in Northeast Syria. So, but we can say that with both administrations, the decision of defeating the terror, it is there. So we are now still continuing to defeat the terrorism of ISIS. We are still continuing at the partnership. We have a good partnership with the United States even in order to have this continuation of defeating ISIS and the terrorists in the Syria. Even though we defeated ISIS military and geography, but still there are sleeper cells in the region. Still we have a lot of challenges there. Still we have the camps, which is the whole camps. It is actually, it is a city of ISIS, we can say it is there in the camp. It is about 63,000 families and children and women living in this camp. And most of them, they are the fighters' family and so on. So this is another challenge, and we need the support for this camp in order to be able to defeat the terror and the ideology of terrorism in the radicalism in the area. It needs a lot of efforts, a global efforts actually. It needs to have, supporting for the building school, infrastructures, health, in order to get rid of all this ideology in the region. Education is very important. Unfortunately, till now, we don't get any support for this camp, as well as we have 12,000 of the fighters, the leaders of the ISIS who are in the prison now. And even they are, in the danger. If anything happen in the region, it will be a danger there if any attack to the region happen. So this will be maybe, running away from the prison, and it will have a lot of problem and even threat to the region and to the other, even in Europe and the United States and so on. So there are a lot of challenges actually for us in the region. Still I can say I would like to thank the United States to continue working with us in this issue, continuing with defeating ISIS and fighting ISIS sleeper cells, but we need to translate this victory against ISIS to be a political victory also. And this is what we need, to be at the table, to be recognized there at the table of the peace talk, to be in the Constitution Committee. And it doesn't make any sense that you defeated the military side, the ISIS and the terrorist groups. We paid 11,000 people died in defeating ISIS when we protected actually all the whole world from this terror. And we are not at the table. And this is what we need.
All right. Thank you so much, Sinam. Mohammad. We have a question from our participants. Philip Arthur, he says, do the panelists have any opinions on the move of the state in Turkey to close the HDP, the pro-Kurdish party, as well as leaving the Istanbul Convention and its impact on women in Turkey? Meghan or Elif, would you like to go ahead with that question? Elif, would you like to?
Sure, I'll get us started, and then Meghan or can finish us off. I mean, it's a great question. I think, and really, like within the larger context, I mean, I think we have to realize that none of these things are in a vacuum. None of these, these situations right now are in a vacuum, and they're all actually really quite interconnected. And so, the move of the Turkish state to shut down the HDP, which is the People's Democratic Party of Turkey, if you're not familiar, and also leaving what is known as the Istanbul Convention, which is a very progressive, piece of law towards women's rights in general, is actually, also connected to this larger struggle, just by virtue of the fact that Turkey has made it their mission over a decade of about 40 years to shut down every single Kurdish, pro-Kurdish, pro-progressive party in Turkey, and then trying to eliminate the same kind of forces and the same kind of progressive politics in the region of Afrin, as we were saying about the invasion, but then just Rojava in general, and then the autonomous administration. And so all of these, the HDP is a big, a very adamant supporter of what has been going on in Rojava, and there's a lot of collaboration there, and this is what is the most terrifying thing to Turkey. So of course they are feeling vulnerable, and they are just attacking on all fronts. So they are attacking, them shutting down the HDP at this time is not a coincidence. We can all contextualize it in the larger, struggle. And same with the Istanbul Convention. I mean, this is a country that is just, sees any sort of progressive feminist politics, progressive groups, queer politics, and specifically, oppressed peoples of Kurdistan politics as a threat. So I think it's very important that we also recognize the importance of this issue, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Elif. Meghan, would you like to add something on that one?
Yeah, sure. I think that, look, when you're looking at the issue that ties all of this together, you have a regime in Turkey right now that is made up of far-right religious fundamentalists and far-right nationalists. You have President Erdogan's party, the AKP, is a nationalist and religious fundamentalist party. And then you have his junior coalition partner, the MHP, which is quite honestly a fascist party. This is a party that came out of like fascist street gangs that would, run around attacking Kurds, leftists, women, all kinds of oppressed groups. So you have a government that is, by its very nature, based on hostility to anyone who doesn't fit into one very narrow religious and nationalist idea. And that's why they're so threatened. The Istanbul Convention, which has protections for women against domestic violence, the HDP, which stands, as Elif mentioned, for all the oppressed peoples in Turkey, not just the Kurds, but for other minorities, for women, for LGBT people, for workers, for environmentalists. All of these causes, are united in the HDP's politics. And that's why this government is so against Rojava too, because Rojava, North and East Syria, shows that a diverse region of many different nations and many different religions can come together and live together on the basis of these ideas that are represented by, the Kurdish women's movement, by the HDP, by the Syrian Democratic Council, by so many organizations across the region. And on that note, if you want to do anything related to improving the situation, for North and East Syria, for oppressed peoples in Turkey, for women in Turkey, for democratic politics in Turkey, you have to advocate for, and this is something that can be done on the solidarity front, an end to the kind of regime in Turkey that's based on these fascist ideas. And the only way that that can happen is with a political solution to the Kurdish question in Turkey. Now, there were negotiations on that in 2013 to 2015 that was being worked on. That was actually one of the things that the HDP was established to do, was to mediate, to come to a resolution to this conflict and fundamentally change the kind of state that Turkey was, from an exclusive state built on one nation and one flag to an inclusive one for all the people of Anatolia and Mesopotamia. And when those peace negotiations broke down, because Erdogan saw that peace meant that people would support the opposition and be free to express their ideas, you had this fascist crackdown that's led to everything from these invasions of northern Syria to the crackdown on all kinds of pro-democracy and oppressed groups within the country. So advocating for peace, especially in the United States and Canada, where our governments support the Turkish government's war against, the Kurdish freedom movement, advocating for our governments to end that support, to end those arms sales and military aid, and to say, look, you have to sit down, you have to negotiate, you have to resolve this. That's one of the ways that we're going to get the fundamental transformation that would make a difference everywhere from Rojava to women's rights in Turkey, minority rights in Turkey, all of the issues were talked about today.
Well, I just want to add something on that. As we all know that there's a huge crackdown on the women activists in Turkey, and there are a lot of thousands of Kurdish women activists are now in jail. So it's really hard to they've been fighting against the patriarchy as well, and also they are trying to prevent the male violence. So right now with the COVID, as we know all over the world, there's a surge of violence against women, and in Turkey, Islamic Convention is important in terms of like preventing this violence. So the state just recently launched a hotline. It's called KADES. It has listed a lot of languages like Arabic, French, Turkish, Persian, like even like French, but not Kurdish. Kurdish is not in that hotline list. So women can, like a Kurdish woman cannot call this hotline and ask for help in their native language. So like Kurds in not just in like in other levels, but in terms of like violence against women, in terms of that too, they're not included, not just in the constitution, but just in a violence against, to prevent the violence against women hotline, they're not included in that. So there's another question that I wanted to jump into. It's from our participants, Hannah Schropp, I hope I pronounced that good. I have a question for any of the panelists. I'm also pretty new to this information, so please excuse me misspeaking. So this conversation was on specifically Rojava, but are these feminist ideas held by all Kurdish people? And how should the Kurdish people form solidarity within themselves when they are so spread out? Anyone want to jump into that question and answer that? Elif, would you like to say something?
Sure, I didn't want to necessarily, again, jump in, but I see that it's about international solidarity. So Hannah, thank you so much for your question. And please, I mean, we're, don't even hesitate for a second. We're not assuming that anyone has any, background about this information. We're so happy to even hear about your interests. As for myself, maybe this will help you a little bit, like, you can wear many hats in terms of international solidarity. I'm, Canadian going to school in the US and also Kurdish. And it's just, like there's no specific, like, pigeonholing or profile that is involved in this. I mean, we have so many friends from all different international solidarity works. And that's, what I was kind of trying to emphasize. As for, I mean, I think we want to be hesitant of, in terms of like the Kurdish people. I mean, this is, you're talking about four different regions of colonized people. So Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. And we were focusing specifically on Rojava because the radical experiment is the most prolific and prominent there. I mean, we are seeing the feminist radical ideology and praxis that is the most focused there. But clearly, as we were also trying to explain, there is a connection overall with the women's movement, in Kurdish women's movement in Turkey as well, and there's that tradition as well. So other parts of Kurdistan also, I mean, there has been a lot of evidence of really progressive feminist politics, armed revolutionary groups in Rojava, in the Iranian part of Kurdistan. And then the southern part of Kurdistan, I believe, ideologically, it might not be as, we're not necessarily as aligned. I mean, I'm sure that, other panelists don't quote me on this. I'm just saying, there might be some ideological differences, but still, I think all, four parts of Kurdistan support, certainly feminism, but there's certain parts of Kurdistan that actually support radical feminist revolutionary ideas. And that's what's really exceptional. And the most prominent area, like the most, we see, the Syrian civil war in a lot of ways also created, I mean, it's very paradoxical in that sense, but it created an opportunity for a vacuum to be filled by this incredible radical feminist social experiment. I haven't been to Rojava personally myself, so I want to stop here about Rojava, but I can at least say in terms of like international solidarity, it's across the world. Thank you.
Right.
Ruken, do you mind if I jump in real quick? We have about 12 minutes. So I was wondering if we can combine the last two questions because they're both for Sinam. And then there's another question that so I'll just pose one general question that says, what is the possibility of Turkey attacking northeast Syria again and occupying more territory? So that's one question. And then Sinam, there are two separate questions for you. One is, what are the most pressing material needs in terms of emergency in emergency aid, and what can we do from the United States government, for example, to provide material relief? So that's one, material relief question. And the second one, when we talk about Rojava and the military invasion, we keep talking about, men and women who basically were killed in the process, like martyrs, but there are also a lot of people who were injured and disabled in the process, and several of them are captured by, Turkey. So, and Europe does not accept them for treatment, for example. So this is from Berivan. And so is there, the last part, it's women from Rojava were captured and put into Turkish prison. Regarding the Geneva Convention, is there again any initiative on this issue? So they're two separate questions, but yeah, I'll stop there. So maybe we should address the first one, or Sinam, do you want to go now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Actually, I will start with the last point you raised, which is about the women that have been now arrested in Turkey and be in the jail. And, she is Shisha Kubani, it's called, and she was fighting the terrorists in Ras Al Ain and, ISIS. And unfortunately, she has been arrested by the group of the military group, radical group, and taken to Turkey. And now she is in Turkey in the present, which is, they mentioned that it is against the international law actually to be. She should be back to Syria. And in Syria, if there is any issue, we can there deal with this issue. It is not actually making any sense of, legally, nobody accept that, but still Turkey is violating all the international terms actually. In Afrin, what is Turkey doing? Violating all the terms in front of all the people, all the world, and the world turning blind eyes actually on that. This is what we are really very worried about. So for Shishak, she was, defending her and defending her people from the terrorist groups, and she will be, now she is in the jail. With the other side, the United States and the global coalition, all the countries, they are defeating, supporting to defeat ISIS and to fight the terrorists. So it is really, doesn't make any sense for us, and we call for the international community to release this Shishak Kubani and to go back to her, because she didn't violate any of the human rights in Turkey. She did not do anything to Turkey so that she will be taken to Turkey. And as many women, even not only she, many women from Afrin have been arrested, and they are civilian, they are not fighters. They have been arrested and taken to Turkey and investigation, to be investigated in Turkey. And who is dealing with them and asking them the question? They were Turkish people. So they are not Syrian people. All this, they are violation for the international norms actually. The other one is about, what do we need? For our Rojava. Yes, now during the economic crisis in Syria, in all over Syria, all the people, they are suffering a lot of, because of the war, because of the sanction on Syria, and because of in our region, actually, we have now the COVID-19 pandemic. So with all these things, the people, they are suffering a lot. Even the administration in north of Syria, they are trying to make some balance between the salaries and the high prices of all the materials there. They increase the salary for the people there. Recently, it has been increased also 30% for all the people working in the administration, but still it is not enough, So what we need now, first of all, we need to have the support for the medical support, especially for the COVID vaccine now. And now recently they declared now it is a very important issue in Rojava. Sorry, is many cases has been now increased for the COVID, Corona. We have a lot of cases, and they have now shut down for the government there. Oh. And they have taken many measurements. So they close, they prevent gathering and all these things, but still the number of the coronavirus, it's increasing. With the lack of medicine, with the lack of the, even vaccination, no vaccination. We asked it to have the vaccination. We have 5 million people living in the region. So imagine 5 million people there with all the economic crisis. We don't have all these things. So we need this thing. Another thing is there the IDPs problem. I mentioned we have many of the IDPs problem with from the Sherkany and Tel Abyad, 300,000, and from Afrin also 300,000. All these people, they are, who is, taking care of them? Our administration. The burden on the administration is very, very difficult, and they need the support from the international support, all this. Recently, we heard that the United States, they have the stabilization fund to give for the Syria, and they declared about nearly $600,000, million to be taken. But still, we don't know if it will be taken to all over Syria, not only to our region. So what we need now there, because the region, of course, the other part of Syria is suffering a lot because of the economic crisis, because of the economic sanction, all this is there. But our region, we need to have the stabilization fund. Many cities like Raqqa, like Deir ez-Zor, like other cities have been destroyed completely while fighting ISIS. And this now, till now, many people, they don't have any houses, their homes. Their homes have been destroyed. So this is another issue we have to work on now. Of course, I mentioned the issue of Al-Hol camp, which is another even burden on our administration. So a lot of things, challenges. For that, we need the support to have the stabilization fund for our region, and in order to build the schools, hospitals, for the providing electricity, water for all these cities, which has been destroyed. So when you see a mess, when you see a people, they are not living in their houses, and they are in need of money, these people, they are being used by the ISIS, paying them money in order to be with the sleeper cells of ISIS. And this is another issue. So that we have to get rid of the sleeper cells, even by supporting these people and creating a new environment to be away from this radicalism and this ideology. And this is really what we need. I don't know if there is another question you mentioned about the possibility of Turkish.
I did, but we only have a few minutes left. So, but this has been wonderful, and there are more questions on the chat board. But unfortunately, that means we need to do another panel like this, so we get to chat more. But thank you so much to all of our panelists. This has been a really important conversation. You taught us the importance of exchanging political lessons so that we learn from this wonderful experiment that is happening in Rojava, but also you reminded us of our political responsibilities, that we need to hold our governments and states accountable, but also there's a lot we can do as individuals to participate in the solidarity initiatives that's been going on. So, but we have just 2 minutes. Anybody would like to add anything? I just would like you to end the event.
Well, I just want to thank everyone, and also for Genc and Meghan for organizing this panel. I think we covered a lot of different issues, and also there are really useful links that John shared in the chat box. Maybe people can get those links. They're very important, like for the SDC and the Rojava Information Center. There are really different resources that people can get more information beyond this panel. And they can keep in touch with us. We can provide our emails to them if they have any questions. And I think this kind of panels are important for the lectures, actually, for the undergrad students who are not new to the issue and then don't know that much the region. I hope it has been a good introduction to the Rojava. Thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for Ahmed. Thank you for John. Thank you for Elif, Meghan, and Ruken. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all you've been doing and for being here.
Thank you so
And
much.
Thank you. Thank you.
be safe and thank you.
Thanks to everyone. Thanks to everyone on the panel.
You.
So happy to be here.